So we are going to jump in. My name is Kim. I'm going to be your moderator today for this amazing panel on diversity, equity, and inclusion featuring both Chase and Tony. You can access Chase and Tony's profiles. It's incredible, their experience. You're going to be learning more about them in this conversation, but I do recommend that you check out their profiles, connect with them online, and absolutely support the businesses that they're involved in. Myself, I run Tech Hive, which is a space for mid-career women to upskill their technology so they can become more visible technology leaders. So it's truly an honor to be here today. Again, I have my chat box up. So if you are an attendee and you have any questions for the panelists, feel free to just go ahead and pop that in the chat box and we will work it into our conversation. So Tony and Chase, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having us. Appreciate the invitation to be here today and contribute to the attendees' experience and their education and professional development along the way.
Absolutely. Well, Chase, we're going to start with you, and then Tony, I'll have you jump in. But tell me a little bit about that moment or the motivation that caused you to not necessarily switch your focus, but hone in on the focus for your business and your involvement in terms of inclusion. Because I think there were a couple things that occurred to you that caused you to shift your business a little bit.
I think we talked about this yesterday. Previously, I was in, I have spending about 21 years experience in tech, finance, and everything in between. So my first 14 years, I was mostly in finance. And then the last 6-7 years is going back to almost like 100% to tech and a little bit tech and fintech. So when I first started, I thought, finance and technology should be hand in hand. I have a computer science background, starting in finance, working for an investment banking. It was like, one of those things like, ooh, so cool. And then after the first 6 months, it was very interesting. My first project that I did, I kid you not, it was revamping the entire portfolio management platform. And it took me 6 months to redo that, and for $60 billion portfolio. And I was like, well, how did they get by with using Excel and running a few macros here and there? And it took them, they were using it for quite many times and many years. And I actually was like really dumbfounded with so much money. A lot of these investment firms and banks have so much money and to invest in technology, to invest in resources. They were still using old school technology, and because most of the managers or executives, they're so used to Excel or some of those basics. Then throughout my career, I've seen quite a lot of those, especially when I was in private equity. I was doing mostly due diligence, and I was a CIO of the company at the time, and overseeing portfolios, seeing a lot of information and data coming into to my desk. And many times I get a whole slew of Excel files or, documents that, just like nothing secure, nothing, just like bunch of internal data that I get. And with customers' information, private data that we get. And that was, for me, it's kind of like, okay, how the hell they have hundreds of millions of dollars, and yet this is how they do things. And this is still a lot of companies are still doing it. So in 2016, I was with this company, and then in 2017, I have a personal issue with what was going on with the company at the time, and I just thought that it's time for me to step out. They were moving into, since 2016 with the new administration at the time, they were moving from buying loans that are more affordable for most people to moving into high interest loans. And that was the moment that I realized that this is not something that I want to do. So I stepped out, and then I started my company. At first, I started with a company that is mostly in fintech, building a platform that is easy to use, fully automated, making a lot of these lending service obsolete in a way, using blockchain technology, AI, a lot of security protocols and everything. And I thought, what, if I build something like this, someone wanted, nobody wanted. because they're so used to like piling bodies on top of bodies to do the work. And they didn't really care enough to motivate employees, to empower the employees. This is one thing that I've noticed when, throughout my entire career, a lot of companies, they have the money, they can really invest in a lot of infrastructure, not just R&D, infrastructure, and the literacy of the employees. But many times they don't really spend the money and the time to really invest in the employees. There's only a few percentage of the employees they're willing to invest in. And so, in 2017, 18, build that platform, nobody wanted, and then change up. I'm like, you know what, forget it. Let's repurpose it and move all these automations and process and give it to people to use. Let people to use it. So that was the thing that we pivoted in 2019. And now that we're just, we just want to provide a tech platform for everyone who were previously underserved, who had never really had the opportunity to be able to use $100,000, $200,000 platform with a very affordable pricing and entry-level pricing. And that's what we're offering right now. So, long story short, it's just feel a little bit, like, why is it just, the big guys can afford all these, good technologies when all the little guys are just having, like to use Excel or, some subscriptions that is almost free, but not, really give them all the features and process that they need. So that's what we're trying to do, empower from bottom up and make sure small businesses and minority businesses have some way of growing their business.
That's fabulous. Well, and to your point, being able to compete, right, with something that's affordable that they can actually access and grow with.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the one thing. When I was at Wisdom, one of the women incubator in Chicago, I think I was the most technical in the entire group, and all the women in my group and the previous groups and the groups after me, many times that they were told that they need to, pitch for money to get technologies, to build technology. It's not about the business. It's not about the idea. Their idea is great. It's just, oh, you need to have this to build a platform to get your customers to do X, Y, Z. But if the platform is so expensive for them to build, how are they going to start their business? How is it going to move them from idea phase to launch, right? And this is where I've seen with a lot of minority businesses, especially in Midwest, we have all these channels, but yet we don't get to really, tap into all the capitals and the resources and everyone else who's, saying that they're supposedly helping others. So this is why that I'm building a system where not only that it's a platform for features and products, it also has a community-based, feedback and process within it. So everybody can communicate within the platform. So that's one thing that I'm trying to get with the way that we're providing our software.
Beautiful. Well, and you touched on something, and I'll hand it over to Tony, because again, we did talk before this to get to know each other. And, Chase, when you're talking, it makes me, I don't know, like acutely remember that a lot of times women in minority owned businesses do feel like they're kind of isolated in a room. And Tony, when we were talking, your motivation and the work that you do, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, I want you to share your story, but you said something really powerful, and it's because you have been the only person in the room. So tell me a little bit about your experience, Tony, and how that connects to, you being here today and the work that you're working on.
Well, thank you, and kudos to Chase for her advocacy and championing others, and wonderful to have an ally like you as part of the landscape, and we need more, quite frankly. Answer your question, Kim, partially because of who we all know and built the relationship here with who's been organizing this conference, our wonderful friend. But that has been part of how I've basically moved into this sort of area of expertise. I have been the only one, as you said. For the audience and those listening, I basically started out at the National Center for Supercomputing Applications at the University of Illinois, and was definitely one of the only ones in that organization. But I got to tell you though, I didn't feel that way, just based on the fact of how those particular folks that I worked with a lot, that were mentors, and also wonderful colleagues who became friends. We just had this sort of sense of community, and that community was very shaped in the way of societal culture, internationally, for that matter. And even the living on a campus infrastructure is different in society. And it tends, you do have your pockets where you have issues and things of that nature, but it tends to range on inclusivity as much as possible, and being in a place of community. Um, and not saying that it's perfect. Champaign-Urbana isn't perfect. University of Illinois isn't perfect. National Center of Supercomputing wasn't perfect. And where I am currently, Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory isn't perfect. Well, I worked at the National Center for Supercomputing Applications for a number of years, roughly around 10. And we were an entity, an organization really at the forefront of computing, in high performance computing, and basically what you see today in computer graphics, in interactive techniques, things of that nature. As a result of that, we were heavily involved in that community landscape. And part of that was conferences. So I became involved with a number of conferences where I was basically a committee member on a number of those conferences. Again, welcoming environment for me, but I was one of few or the only a lot of times. As a result of that, um, in about 2016, actually, no, sorry. I mean, I need to go back further. 2006, I was asked, along with a wonderful colleague at Boston University, Jennifer Tate von Hoffman, and I were basically asked to just really do a program that was centered on minority serving institutions, particularly HBCUs. And we wanted to reshape this program because we were having faculty come to that program. And as a result of that, the faculty, the same faces, names over and over again, but they weren't bringing students, they weren't doing anything. So we reshaped it. And along with her and a few other colleagues that got involved, we started this initiative that really centered in on broadening participation. And then that basically was to an influx of trying to reach out to more women and minorities in the field to let them know, to raise their awareness about what can be possible in the area of computing as a whole. So that was part of that exercise for us. And it basically became something that even the National Science Foundation adopted. And they called it BPC, broadening participation in computing. And they went with that sort of framework. And they've changed the name now a little bit, but it's still focused in on broadening participation. And a number of other organizations, and also I would say programs, were centered in on that. So for me, what ended up happening was a natural sort of progression of me being involved, but wanting to raise that awareness for others as well, as how you can basically expand your horizons in computing. Our wonderful host, that's how I ended up running into her as well, and being a part of this her journey and others' journey for a long time now. Not to say how old I am, but but yeah, it just moved, and I've stayed involved. I'm still involved with a number of organizations. I serve on a lot of advisory boards and such, really looking at that space to raise awareness, create access, create opportunity for folks, and then also to mentor those folks along their way on their journey. So it kind of happened naturally for me. It wasn't, something I intended.
Hmm.
Um, is part of my, I guess, my own personal journey as well, because I've always been in the realm of, even though I'm an introvert, um, adapting to other cultures, learning, being involved, being engaged. I mean, even in college, I was part of the Native American house. I was part of the Hispanic house, Latinx house. I was part of the Asian Hawaiian Islanders and Pacific Islanders house. I just did things that were to broaden my awareness and understanding because I was curious. And I had a love of people and culture, and I wanted to help people. So with that said, it was just a natural piece of who I am as a person. And I found that just uplifting for me.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Chase, I want to move over to you quickly. With your business, one thing that you brought up to me, again, in our previous conversations getting ready for this panel, was some of the opportunities that you saw, as a technologist, as an executive, but also as someone who is having visibility into the communities being served and not served. You were talking about high interest rates. And in this conversation, you didn't mention that number, but it is really poignant because actually Illinois just passed or is about to pass a law that's regulating those incredibly high interest rates. So if you could talk a little bit about, kind of piggybacking on what Tony was sharing, the experience that small business owners have. They might not be able to put up personal collateral.
That's right.
What are some of those challenges that individuals have been facing that have prevented, minority owned businesses from flourishing to date? I don't think people are aware of some of the numbers that you shared with me previously.
So the law that you talk about is actually what has been talked about for many, many years. It's not just recently. I believe in 2012 or 13, this was talked about back then, way after the bubble, the real estate bubble. And that was talked about, Warren's talked about this, and there are a lot of chatters on capping the interest rates. And payday loans was, I believe it was 2013, 14. There was like a lot of these payday loan companies in all over the United States. They were really afraid at the time because they knew that at the time they were trying to cap all these payday loans. So that is to the point where one of the previous company I worked for, they have a segment, the payday loan segment. They were going to cut the entire payday loans channel to about 10% of the revenue stream. And normally it's about like 30, 40%. So that was the thing that a lot of companies was thinking, okay, Hillary's coming in and, Obama is trying to pass this, didn't get through. Then 2016, Trump happened. So that changed everything.
And can you share us? I was going to say, share the interest rates with everyone, just so we have that. It's
they're ridiculous. They're ridiculous. So the business loans that I was overseeing at the time when I was at this private equity, majority of these businesses, they have about 7 to 10 years loan with them. And we bought those portfolios, and they were between 100%, which is, you pay 100% for the entire year, to about 249%.
Ridiculous.
It is.
That is so
and that
wrong.
was too low. That was like, they thought that it was too low. That was, I kid you not, that was the portfolio that I had, that would like clinics in in the South, and you know that it's like in distress area, and small clinics that they're trying to pay the payrolls, and that's the loan that they were getting 169% interest loan.
I don't even think the mafia or any of the criminals out there charge that kind of interest rate.
That's why they're loan shark. That's the reason why they're loan sharks. And this is the reason. So this is the problem. There are a lot of issues with what we, not only that is these kind of loans happen, It's our system. It's the systematic system, the financial system that is causing these kind of issues. Think of it this way. When we started as, a teenager, right? When we were in college, we weren't told that we need to have a checking accounts and a saving accounts and all of that. But you know what? Our more affluent, like colleagues, that they started when they were 12. Their grandparents already started them at 12. So when you're looking at underwriting, the way that how underwriting works is looking at the historical data, which is when you started your building your credit reports, right? Your credit history. When you started at 12, you had perfect history till you're 20, which means that you already have 7-8 years of experience of being a good customer, even though you're only 20. But for you and I, we just started working part-time, paying our bills, doing all these other things is like 2 years. So they would get a higher the balance and or limits, and they would get 5,000, we get 500. So when you get 5,000, you can spend more. The more you spend, the more the credits they will give you. And think of all these minorities and businesses out there. They started with practically nothing, and they might have debts. And banks do not give you a loan when you have high debts, and when your history is not as long as your other colleagues. So this is where all these 100%, 200%, 300% type of loans happen, because they know that banks is not going to give you the loan. Where do you find those, the money? These high interest rate loans. So that is one part. And then the second part is our so-called FICO system. The FICO system is rigged. I always say that the credit report bureaus is rigged. The way that they look at the scores and how they rated doing underwriting, that was the work that I used to do. I look at all these underwriting guidelines and all these underwriting models. So I know how they gauge who gets a 69% interest loan, who gets a 150% loan. And majority of those higher interest rate loans are minorities. And it doesn't matter if they're making good money with the business. It doesn't matter if they have good educations and they work in a prestigious company. They still get a higher interest loans than most of the other people. So that is something that is very common. And if I've seen hundreds of thousands of these loans, and that was what we were purchasing. A lot of them, you look at the race and the gender, women also get high interest loans as well. So this is it's not new, it's common in a lot of these underwriting guidelines. And a lot of times when they're doing underwriting, is 80% of the model is already biased, because a lot of these data is based off your race, your gender, and your education. So if you look at that, a lot of us do not fit into the 95 percentile, right? So that's also another, you lose another 20 or 15% of that interest. So that's the reason why that it's unfair. It is, and that's also why that there's still a lot of companies out there making these monies, and they make a lot of money.
Tony, you went off of mute. I want you to jump in. Go ahead.
Yeah, I did want to ask. So you shared the background of what is happening in the bias and the discrimination of the actual all of us, women and minorities, that are basically in this financial sector that aren't benefiting. Mm-hmm. What can we do about it? How can we basically get the credit that we deserve? You give people some ideas on how we can basically beat the system, so to speak.
Oh, I love that. So first thing is, I have been mentoring women in high school and college. And the one thing is, build your financial really early. Start saving, start thinking through, like, how do you make it, have like built a debit card, have a bank with a small debit card with like $50 in it. That start. And then education, literacy. There are a lot of information out there, but they're not really being taught in school, in high school, or even college. I think it was, I believe it was 10, 15 years ago. They were talking about how a lot of these credit card companies, they go to, like the freshmen, when they start orientation, right? You have all these booths where they let freshmen sign up for credit cards and have their parents as the co-signers. I did that when I was first year in college. I was like, oh yeah, I can get my, credit card, for like $1,000 in balance. It's like, okay, I get a limit with that. And I don't know why I need it, but I'm like, okay, I'll just put my mom's information there, and then I get a credit card. And now it's so easy for kids to start, like accumulating debts. Kids nowadays, they're a little bit smarter than what we used to be because a lot of these information is out there. Education, literacy is one thing. And then the second part is I believe that a lot of our communities, the banks and our government really have to put maybe the fingers on the scale a little bit just to say that, we do not tolerate these kind of predatory type of, practice. I don't know, is it regulations or we need to, as a community, we need to change it. We need to say we don't allow these kind of business in our communities. We need to stop that. We need to change that. And as to how we change, like a lot of the business, the minority businesses, educate them in technology. There are things that they can improve and make themselves more relevant in the business world than just, oh, I need money, I need to pay my bills and this and that. It has to be, with the finance literacy and the technology literacy combined. So I think that is one way to help our communities. And besides that, I hope that government will actually step in and say, not allow, any loans over a certain percentage. I think that would be a good way to start.
I don't mean to gang up, Kim, on Chase though, but I have one more question if you allow me, Kim.
Of course, go for it.
That's what we're here for.
And we talked about it. So, I mean, again, this is our fireside chat that we're all participating in. And we talked about the notion of, I mean, I think, we just saw the stock market just go over 34, I think it was. And a month ago, it was at 29.
Yep.
And we had the big news that was happening with GameStop, that financial literacy that you're talking about, I see every day on TikTok happening at a high level.
Yep.
And giving people concrete information as to things they can do. Where does the notion of data science, machine learning, and this sort of financial literacy education intersect for the layperson? So where does that come in for them as part of this education model? What can they use for that piece? Because I see it in the stock market, and not a lot of them are becoming day traders, but they're investing more, it looks like.
Well, first of all, there are a lot of information out there. That's for sure. There are more information and more easy to digest information. Let's put it this way: it's more easier to digest for laymen, like a lot of people. And even my mom was like asking me, "What is this GameStop thing that is going on?" And I'm like, what is it? And she's 85. My mom is 85. And she was talking about this. She saw the news, like, well, people are making millions. Are you in it? I'm like, well, Mom, I went in a little late. But
we all came in late.
Exactly. And I was actually following those guys. I was on Reddit and I was following those guys. And there are a lot, yeah. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? But this is the age nowadays. It's the information. And how do you decipher and really clear up the noises? I think data science is something that is growing, and AI as well. And there are like Trump said, there are fake news. There are a lot of fake information, and we need to find a way in that realm of building clean data to really help consumers. And I see that there are a lot of companies out there really doing that, but they're not doing it to you and I. It's more for corporations, for larger entities, enterprise. So I would hope that someday, I'm trying to do it as well. I'm doing some of the AI stuff and trying to help and changing up the type of biases that is innate with a lot of the setups or questions that is out there or problems that is out there. If we can, as a educator and professional, really push our data scientists, because they only do what we're giving them to do, but we need to tell them, hey, the data itself may not be as unbiased as you think. Remember the Google, like the Google own AI, they were like 89% biased and racist. Remember, because the information out there, what is the problem is the data out there is already very biased. It's very skewed to either one side or the other side. How do we make it more central and say, hey, clean up the mess and let's look at the information as what it should be? And that's the one thing that we need to do as professionals. It's like there are a lot of companies out there putting out true data, but then there are the misinformed entities out there trying to skew those data to their needs. So we need to curb that. We also need to change that. And if the more people changing the way that these algorithm works and changing it so that we don't allow these kind of artificials, algorithmic calculations to skew our view, then that's the way to go. Like a lot of people saying, oh yeah, Google SEO, marketing, and I told people, I was like, yeah, but it's fake, because if you buy into how, like, buy a company, like there are troll farms out there. You ask a company to, hey, I need you to keep searching my name and my information out there with this word. Guess what? Your search is going to go up from the third page to the first page. That's how it works. Right? So we need to have a way of saying, these kind of gaming, like GameStop, gaming the system needs to stop as well. There's so many ways that in data science and AI that we need to change, and we're just at the beginning. Hopefully we don't go into, the Terminator kind of like future. So that's the one thing. And if we, as educators and professionals, do not change that and really, tell people it's like, these are the wrong information, these are the right information, redirect people to the correct path, then, maybe in a couple of years, we're still in the same issues that we're in, the same situation. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and Tony, I want to go back to you and the work that you're doing to, with Chase's point, and absolutely, right? If you're using old biased data to make predictions, you're going to get biased predictions.
Mm-hmm.
Tony, you work not only in your full-time job, but you're also an advisor for a couple nonprofits as well, focused on diversity and inclusion specifically for women, and there's one that's for teen girls. So I'm curious, if you take that mindset, how do you think your work is changing to get more women and people of color in these spaces, to start changing that narrative, change the way we do work, get more diversity in these institutions? It sounds like that's really a lot of the work that you're doing, not only at the Institute, but also for the nonprofits you work in as well.
Yeah. So at the laboratory at Lawrence Livermore, we are really focusing on how do we raise the level of understanding, access, and opportunity for young people across the board. We have a program called Girls Who Code. We have also expanding your horizons for young girls as well, but young people of all gender identities can be involved with those as well with Girls Who Code. It's just, that's the name, and that's the national name of it and everything else. And then we're supportive of other organizations like Black Girls Who Code and things of that nature. The organization you're talking about specifically that you mentioned about me being on the board is called Empower Her organization in LA. And that's basically focusing in on young women in the LA area, mainly Compton, Inglewood, that Gardenia area. And they are challenged in that area. So I work with our new CEO, Dawn Brown, and our last CEO, who was the founder, Betty Lamar, and actually helping the girls understand how they can use what they're studying in school. And we do this across the board. And a part of it is financial literacy and all of those things as well, but also the social context of society as well. They get to learn that. But we focus on STEM from the laboratory perspective and bring that. So I bring female scientists to talk with the girls, mentor, as well as host workshops that show how how their educational journey is being utilized in a scientific space, right? And how that technology is being used in the framework of a national lab that is focused on innovation and creativity, coming up with big ideas. And then, as part-time job for us, actually it's a full-time job, is national security for the nation. So with that said, I've often created spaces, and that's what that first example gave you, to provide that access and opportunity and awareness for folks so they can actually move into the space more. And one of the areas we do need to do this more is in the data science and machine learning space. As Chase alluded to, the issue that we have currently is who's creating these algorithms, right? That actually centers in this space. And I didn't always do DEI. I was also in computing for a long time. But with my colleagues who taught me a lot of the computing, because I did not go to school and I'm not a PhD for it. But I had, like I said, I had great colleagues who basically included me into the framework of computing, and they taught me a lot of things in that space. So with that said, how do we create more of those type of opportunities and get people on teams that have diverse backgrounds, ethnic journeys, I mean, that cultural and ethnical backgrounds as well, that can actually help facilitate the growth and the innovation and creativity of what we're trying to do? Because part of what you see, I encourage anyone to go and watch Coded Bias. One of the students I know very well, who is the founder of that, Joy Buoniwini, I met Joy when she was an undergraduate. I don't think she knew this was gonna be her path and her passion. But she had a joy about creativity. She had a joy centered around computing and a passion, and she just followed her path. And what we try to do at Livermore is to encourage young people to explore, because you can have passion, but and love for something, but it can also change over your journey, in your life journey in time. So be open to basically exploring new ideas and things of that nature as well.
Is that the same kind of work that you bring into your new committee chair position at, is it SIGGRAPH?
Yeah. So ACMC Graph, thank you for mentioning that, is a computer graphics and interactive technique. So basically using technology and tools and things of that nature to help advance the academy in the space of computing graphics. And I came into that based on my experience, like I said, at NCSA, and has continued today at Lawrence Livermore, in the area of scientific visualization originally. And that's where we started at in the space. And I was involved with that organization a long time. And then roughly about 3 years ago, I was out for a couple of years or two, and they wanted to build a committee around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And they called and asked if I would come in and help them with that. And we were facing similar things that we're talking about with the machine learning, computer graphics industry, Hollywood. All of that is basically facing the same sort of issues of lack thereof of inclusion. All right. And as a result, my job was to really focus in on and building that inclusion framework for us. And I didn't do it alone. We have a great leadership group, but I have a great international committee. I have folks basically in Asia, Australia, in Europe, Germany, Brazil, I mean, all over the world. So we can make sure that we're building a community that is looking at the landscape for everyone. And that's part of this is really trying to look at that landscape, but create equity within that landscape as well. All right. And then make sure that we're including people. Not only when you're creating that access and opportunity, you want to basically build an inclusive environment for them that basically means that not only they're invited, that their voices are heard, and that we're basically working toward trying to implement fairness across the board for as much as possible for everyone. But fairness and equity, typically go hand in hand, but today there has to be a little bit more of that social justice, equity justice that actually moves the needle a little bit forward even more. Just like what Chase was saying, there's issues here with the financial sector and such. And I've seen a lot of financial companies now really move into this space of trying to create equity. They're throwing money at it, but they're doing more than that with some of them, not all of them for sure, but with some of them, they are doing that. But yeah, thank you for asking me about Empower Her, about SIGGRAPH. Both of those are very passionate for me, empowerher.org. And then you can go to ACM SIGGRAPH as well. And you'll be able to do that. And ACM means let's see, Association for Computing Machinery. So, and it's a international organization that people can be involved in, and they have special interest groups. That's what a SIG is, and that's why ours is SIGGRAPH. All right, and based upon that, you have different areas within those SIGs that people can focus in on. And I was just part of a DEI committee for virtual reality, and that was IEEE's version of the conference that they were putting on. So there you go, Kim. Thank you for both.
Of course. And you said it's acm.org?
ACM SIGGRAPH. Yeah, you'll be able to see ACM SIGGRAPH and you can post it up there. So thank you for that.
Okay. I'm going to do that right now.
Yeah.
graph.org.
Yeah.
Okay. And actually you just ended on actually a really positive note that you said you're seeing the change. You use the analogy of being invited. I forget who wrote this, but thank you, Becky. The analogy of being invited to the dance, and someone wrote this great article on LinkedIn, and they said, it's inclusion's not that, it's being on the party planning committee.
Yep.
And it's really being in the room from the beginning. And how do we get not just being invited to the dance once it's done, right? The models are created, all that. It's getting more people in the planning committees, getting more people at the root and the founding of it, knowing that we're going against some very institutionalized, racist organizations. And that's just the way this country was built. And so you really got to get in at the roots again. Chase, your business is actually really exciting because it undercuts in a really positive, disruptive way the access and the ability to compete. So in the few minutes we have left, I want to ask you, we talked about the challenges that have made it so we still have to do this work today. But what's some of the progress that makes you enthusiastic about the future? What keeps you up? Obviously, your business makes me excited. And I think we said this, I'm going to have a conversation with you about your system and being an early adopter. But what gets you excited? What do you see changing that hopefully is going to not just continue the progress, but accelerate the progress?
So piggyback off of what Tony was saying, corporations have finally realized it is they have the money, but they need to do a little bit more, right? It's about time that, and also we have a new administrations really, bringing every color, every, look and diversity into our government. If our government is the one that holding, all these regulations and, grants and money to communities like ours, and if we don't have our champions, someone who will champion for us, for women, minority, and everyone in between, then we won't be able to grow, or we won't be able to break into, the future that we are looking forward to. And, it's to a lot of corporations, yes, they do put a lot of money into social impact and a lot of diversity programs. But as a consumers, as a citizen of this, this world, we need to speak up. As individual, we all have to speak up. That's how I always tell my interns, I call them my kids, my mentees, and I was like, you need to be loud and bold and embrace everything that's thrown at you. It doesn't matter what it is, how bad it is. You just have to embrace it and walk past it and say, I want more. We need to speak up and tell our government and tell our communities and tell our parents and educators and say, I want to learn more. I want you to give me more instead of waiting for them to hand it to us, right? This is what also empowered myself. I see like I try to bring the girls in my company and really help them understand you don't need to be just smart or just, being good enough. You need to be able to speak up, stand tall, and look people in the eyes and say, I want this. I want to be, this right here. So I think a lot of my, especially women, I'm the youngest in the family, so I'm the, the most talkative one. So I'm always telling girls is like, don't feel like you need to stand behind someone. Doesn't matter if it's a guy or a woman or whatever. You need to stand up tall and tell people, this is what I want. This is where I want to be. Help me. Ask for help. If the government does not have any of those programs, talk to someone who has influence over the government, over the communities. Tell them what you're looking for instead of searching. And my goal is not only that I'm providing the technology, I'm also providing the community where an ecosystem of, people, human, we come in and help each other out. Ask, I haven't asked, putting it out there, I'm asking for this, someone willing to come in and help, or I'm giving help, someone willing to take. And this is what this is what I'm looking forward to. And this is what I always say to everyone that, coming to my path is like, just be bold, just ask, just, if government is not giving you that, go somewhere else and see, circle around and go back to them. Or enterprise or companies, corporations are not doing that, be the customers, voice of the customer and tell everybody is like, we have been talked about like some of the, so-called cancel culture. It's not the cancel culture. It's the herd community where everybody has a voice. We need to bring our voice up so that we all can be heard. And that's what it should be.
Yeah, and there's a difference between cancel and accountability.
Yes.
So you got to make sure we're
Yep.
holding people accountable as
Exactly.
part of this. And that's including those financial companies and the organizations that we basically are involved in as well. So that's part of the landscape at Livermore that we live in, that we're holding ourselves accountable for basically moving into the direction to make our culture, our organization more inviting, more welcoming, and as you said, Kim, embedding and integrating people into the framework of what it is institutionally we do, because you're absolutely right. We have to actually change things from an institutional framework to move things along to make it better. Chase said that as well. The regulation and the policies and things of that nature has to also be accounted for, not only bringing people to the table, but and inviting them involved, but also making sure you're changing guidelines and policies and rules that reflect what you're trying to achieve as well.
Absolutely. Well, and Tony, I read an article and I was putting this together, looking at your background and hearing you speak, and I recalled an article from the New York Times, and we've all felt this, right? The disproportionate impact of the pandemic on women and people of color. But there was an article in the New York Times specifically for women and mothers in science. And so as I'm listening to you talk and I'm looking at your background and the work that you do to support women, I mean, what would you say to folks as they start to look at themselves and their opportunities? It sounds like there's probably people like yourself and committees that you're a part of in a lot of organizations that are being started now. Is there anything you can tell to the folks listening now or in the recording, if they're feeling like they need some help or they're feeling a little bit like you talked about being the insider versus the outsider, what they can do to start moving forward and feeling like they're engaged in this journey?
Yeah, what I would say, and you're absolutely right, the pandemic has impacted women and minorities, our Native American community hard, very hard. And as a result, we need to pay attention to that to see how we're going to change moving forward to progress in a way. And I can say that the Department of Energy is looking at that as part of an executive order from the White House, and part of a working group that we're looking at racial equity as part of that to develop a report for the administration on this. And it's all federal agencies are doing that. But to speak to what you're talking about is how do these folks basically look at the opportunities as we start to hopefully come out of this pandemic with the vaccine and everything else, because there's still a lot of unknowns, right? And we're trying to get the herd immunity. I mean, I can't talk this morning. Immunity as we move forward. And with that said, yeah, there will be opportunities. There's a lot of organizations and companies that they can basically work with. So, for example, I would say one of the organizations that I am a huge fan of and been an ally since the beginning is called, it's part of the Anita Borg Institute, and that's the Grace Hopper Conference as part of that. So a Chicagoan is actually the CEO of that. So I would definitely look at the Grace Hopper Conference as part of that. And then the other one I would say is there are a bunch of companies and organizations that are specializing in basically creating opportunities for women into this space as well. And you would want to look at those as well. And I'm actually very quickly trying to look up one that my colleague would basically be remiss. But if you're a student, though, I would say is look at, well, I'm sorry, I should have definitely student or non-student. So Society of Women Engineers, definitely go with that one as well. And then the other one that I would say is Lesbians Who Tech, if you're part of that community or not part of that community. You would want to also look at that as part of where you want to try and take some of your, I guess, expertise to make him more visible for folks. But depending on what field you're in, you want to just basically leverage sort of the conference arena right now to basically retool, reskill yourself in that space. And then also, because you'll be able to go to talks, workshops, things of that nature, and still get updated on what's happening in the space as well. So, but yeah, there's a bunch of different organizations. You mentioned a few here that you have, but there are many, many others as well. But thank you for asking that, because I think we do need to make it available for these opportunities more for women and such. And I think we have another question.
We do. And actually, you did a great job addressing that. So, because one of those questions that we got actually from our attendees is, how can folks trying to get into the data profession or other data professionals to increase representation as it develops? And yes, being involved in conferences. One of the things that my organization does is make sure we have that diversity on stage. Women and minorities are doing great work. Sometimes we just don't see them on stage. So participating, doing what Chase said, standing up, being proud. Go ahead, Tony. Were you going to say something?
I was going to say one other thing, and one of the other things that you can do, and this is a shameless personal plug, actually for my daughter, is to seek out coaching in this space. My daughter is Marlena. She lives in Flossmoor in Chicago, and she coaches women along these lines as well. So seek out coaching that can really help you. And it's, Coach Marlena.as.m at career strategy session. So, she can provide access. So she navigated her career in this space. And quite frankly, it was after going to one of these conferences that I told her to go to. So she graduated in a total different field, retooled herself and reshaped herself over and over again, got to be a six-figure sort of corporate person, and decided that that wasn't what she really wanted, and decided to say, I want to help women. And I want to help women, minority women, basically seek out how they can, move themselves further in that. But
That's
coaching in
beautiful.
general across the board, she just happens to be one, along with a host of so many others that are out there. But coaching, it can help you quite a bit.
Thank you. Well, and Chase, I want to give you in our last 2 minutes here, Tony, while Chase answers that same question, could you put her website in our chat box here for the attendees? That'd be fabulous. And then Chase, I'll open it up to you. Any final words and advice for folks interested in continuing the efforts and increasing representation in leadership in these areas of data?
So for personally, I agree with Tony. Coaching, mentorship, seeking advisorship or mentorship is one thing that really help. I've been like, I get people like come to my LinkedIn or even email me from my websites and from my company websites. It's like, hey, I'm looking for this job. I am in school. I got those emails all the time because of the websites that we talk about including women and helping women. And so I get a lot of these and I bring them in as interns. And sometimes I just I mentor them. And being a leader in whatever field that you are in, try to open up. If you have the experience, you think that you have the bandwidth to help, go seek them out and go, speak at events and tell people, hey, I'm willing to do this. This is the way to, paying forward. And we all need to think like that and say, I might have, 2 extra hours a week that I can help someone else. Or I might have, some experience or network, right? Even my interns, I'm like, I have network from, a couple of the schools that I have, a large community network, and I help them. I, help them find jobs. I help them find mentors. I help them find coaches. And this is the way for a lot of leaders that need to, stand up and own it, really own it. I think this is from personally, this is what I do. I have interns and girls. I seek out women in tech. I seek out women in STEM and look for them and give them opportunities that they normally do not get. So that's, one thing that I'm trying to do. And also, in the community and also with my company. So as, for everyone else, is like, if you are a student, if you know that you have certain weaknesses, seek out for someone, ask for help, ask someone who can help you to find that person to help you. If you're a leader in the community, see where your skills can help. And, tell people, it's like, I am in this, I want to help. And there will be people swarming you. So that's my advice and suggestions.
Can I add to
Beautiful.
that piece? I want to basically ask all of our white men that want to be allies, get involved, get engaged to this process and provide opportunities to help create access and opportunity and mentorship in a way that can basically change this environment for all of us. And I think that has to be part of this, is that, all of those people that are on teams and such will more than likely be a group of men as part of this. And as a result of that, let's create the change to build a more inclusive community in the areas of AI and data science as much as possible. So, but it's going to take all of us to be a part of that journey. So it's my plea to them to just say, hey, let's invite all the people who can help with building the community in a way that can be impactful for society in a good way.
Absolutely. Thank you. Well, Chase and Tony, thank you so much. Tony, just to echo, your and Chase's last points, it is about individuals with power and privilege and access to not only continue to excel, but to reach down and pull others up with them, extend that ladder and bring a beautiful group of diverse and included individuals along the journey. So thank you both again. This has been recorded. So for those that are watching, thank you for joining us. Thank you for participating in this conference. Please enjoy this panel, share with your friends, take heart and a lot of learnings from this conversation. Thank you to DataYet for the opportunity to bring this together. And we wish you all the best, and we'll see each other again soon, I'm sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.